Okay, let's just dive right in. February 28th, 2026. This is the day the line in the sand was officially drawn. In a move that honestly has no precedent, the US government basically declared war on one of its own companies, putting one of Silicon Valley's absolute brightest stars right in the crosshairs of the Pentagon. And it all just exploded into public view with this stunning declaration from President Trump. Now you gotta understand, this wasn't just a fiery post. This was effectively an executive order delivered through social media. It marks a kind of government action against a major American tech company that we have just never seen before. The order was simple: shut it down now. And right on the heels of the president's post, the US Department of War, what we used to call the Pentagon, made it all official. They slapped Anthropic with this supply chain risk designation. I mean, think about that. That's a label that's normally reserved for foreign adversaries, right? Companies like Huawei. So this wasn't just a contract dispute anymore. This was the US government officially branding a top-tier American AI lab as a threat to the nation. So the big question is, how? How did we even get here? How does a celebrated AI innovator, a company that was literally working on classified military projects, suddenly get labeled a national security threat, seemingly overnight? Well, the story here goes way deeper than just a single government contract. When you really boil it all down, this whole conflict is a fundamental clash between two absolute titans, each operating with a completely different worldview. It's really a collision between code and command, between Silicon Valley and Washington, D.C. All right, so here's where the two sides drew their lines in the sand. On one side, you've got Anthropic, led by their CEO, Dario Amodei. They drew two firm red lines, rooted in democratic values and AI safety. No mass surveillance of Americans, and no killer robots that operate without a human in the loop. Simple. But on the other side, the Pentagon, under Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, demanded totally unrestricted access for what they termed all lawful purposes. They wanted no guardrails, no corporate limits that could slow them down in the heat of battle. Okay, so to really get what's happening, we need to look under the hood. We have to talk about the actual technology at the heart of this whole firestorm, because this isn't just about policy. It's baked right into the code. You see, Anthropic's star model, Claude, isn't just trained on a boatload of data like other AIs. It's governed by a literal constitution. This is their unique secret sauce. They hard-code ethical principles directly into the AI's core logic. So for Claude, safety isn't some add-on. It's a fundamental part of how it thinks. And we're not talking about some vague two-page mission statement here. The 2026 version of Claude's Constitution is a massive 23,000-word document. I mean, to put that into perspective for you, that is nearly half the length of a novel. And its core principles, they're modeled on the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, this is the really cool part, how it actually works. It's this constant loop of self-correction. The AI gives an answer, then it immediately checks that answer against its own constitution, and then it rewrites the response to make sure it's staying harmless and aligned with its core values. It's like having a tiny ethics committee built right into the code, running on every single query. But, and this is the huge but, this is where the two worlds collide. For the Department of War, these safety features weren't a feature at all. They saw them as a bug. In their eyes, all this internal ethical debate is just a technical bottleneck. It's a delay that slows down decision-making to an unacceptable level when you're talking about combat speed in a high-stakes, life-or-death situation. So, you can see this collision course, right? This fundamental disagreement just set the stage for a huge showdown. And as the final deadline, 5:01 p.m. on February 27th, got closer, the Pentagon started escalating its threats, forcing this whole thing into a very public, very tense standoff. And believe me, the government brought the heavy artillery. They didn't just threaten to cancel the contract. No, they threatened to use these obscure, old national security laws to basically cripple Anthropic's entire business, cutting them off from all federal work and maybe even from their biggest corporate partners. But even with all that intense pressure, Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei, he didn't blink. He came out publicly and refused to back down. He said flat out that the company would not compromise its core principles, and argued that the tech just isn't safe or reliable enough for the kind of life-or-death uses the Pentagon was pushing for. And that was the Pentagon's response. Secretary Hegseth didn't frame Anthropic's position as a safety concern, not at all. He called it the ideological whims of big tech, painting them as an arrogant company trying to dictate terms to the US military. And with that, the decision was final. The lines were drawn. The Pentagon
So the deadline passes, Anthropic is officially on the blacklist, and the market's reaction was just shocking. It was immediate. And what happened next really pulled back the curtain on the brutal, high-speed dynamics of this new AI arms race.
I mean, the ink was barely dry on Anthropic's blacklisting when its #1 competitor, OpenAI, just swooped right in a move that sent shockwaves through the industry. CEO Sam Altman announced a massive, multi-year partnership to become the new digital backbone for the Pentagon's most secret networks. And this slide just lays out the scoreboard plain and simple. It shows you the immediate fallout. For Anthropic, being blacklisted means facing a potential boycott from its key partners, and it puts their big, planned IPO in some serious jeopardy. But for OpenAI, it's an absolute jackpot. Their valuation surged, and now they have exclusive access to huge defense budgets and infrastructure. And you have to understand, that supply chain risk label is a really powerful weapon. It creates what's called a secondary boycott. That means any company that wants to do business with the Pentagon, we're talking giants like Amazon Web Services or Palantir, they might be forced to completely sever ties with Anthropic or risk losing their own massive government contracts. The message to the rest of Silicon Valley was crystal clear. Dissent comes with a very steep price. But here is the most stunning twist in this entire saga. In his big announcement, OpenAI's Sam Altman claimed that their new deal included the exact same safeguards, the same rules on domestic surveillance and human responsibility that Anthropic was blacklisted for refusing to remove. This just raises a huge question. Was the government's real problem with the safety rules themselves, or was it simply about punishing Anthropic's defiance? So, at the end of the day, this whole crazy episode leaves us with a fundamental, incredibly high-stakes question about our future. When it comes to using artificial intelligence in war, who gets to write the rules? Is it the coders in Silicon Valley who build the tech? Is it the commanders on the battlefield who use it? Or is it the lawmakers in Congress who are supposed to be overseeing it all? That's a question we no longer have the luxury of ignoring.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. It really helps the channel grow. See you in the next video.